Imagine a barley grain sitting quietly inside a roasting kiln at around 100 degrees Celsius. The grain is only beginning to warm up. The moisture inside slowly evaporates, and its color shifts from pale to a soft golden shade. The aroma at this stage is gentle and comforting, very similar to the smell of freshly baked bread. If you have ever walked past a bakery early in the morning and caught the scent of warm bread drifting through the air, that feeling is almost exactly what happens during this stage. Brewers call this light roasting. Barley treated at this level is often used to create light-colored beers, such as lagers or pilsners. But if the temperature keeps rising, things start to become far more interesting. At around 150 degrees Celsius, the sugars and proteins inside the grain begin reacting with each other. This is when the famous Maillard reaction, a well-known chemical reaction in the culinary world, starts to work more intensely. You can picture it like the moment a steak in a hot pan begins turning golden brown. The aroma becomes deeper, richer, and more complex. For barley, this stage produces amber tones and subtle caramel flavors. Many beers, such as amber ales or pale ales, originate from grains roasted at this level. But the journey toward dark beer is still far from over. Now imagine the temperature continuing to climb. At around 200 degrees Celsius or higher, the barley grains begin turning dark brown, eventually becoming almost completely black. If you were only looking at them with your eyes, you might think the grains had been burned. Yet strangely, in the world of food, a little bit of burning is sometimes exactly where flavor becomes the most fascinating. At this temperature, both the Maillard reaction and caramelization become extremely intense. Hundreds of new flavor compounds are created. Some of these compounds carry notes of dark chocolate, others resemble roasted coffee, and some evoke the smell of toasted bread crust. If you have ever smelled freshly ground coffee, you have already experienced the result of a roasting process very similar to this.
The aroma
Brewers
on this
use
batch
these
is
deeply
exceptional, very
roasted barley
consistent roast.
grains to produce beer
Agreed, the
styles
color
such
is
as
perfect
stout
for the
or
stout.
porter. Even a small amount of dark roasted grain can transform an entire batch of beer, giving it its deep color and distinctive flavor. What makes this even more interesting is that the coffee or chocolate notes in dark beer usually do not come from real coffee or chocolate. They come from roasted barley. In other words, dark beer is a bit like a dish cooked skillfully over fire. It is not burned to bitterness, but roasted just enough to create deep, layered, and complex flavors. Now, think about the experience of drinking a dark beer for the very first time. You raise the glass and take a slow breath in. The first aroma that usually appears is roasted coffee or dark chocolate. Then comes a hint of toasted bread, sometimes followed by subtle earthy notes or a touch of caramel. For many people, that moment instantly brings espresso to mind. And the similarity is not a coincidence. Both coffee and dark beer rely on the same basic principle roasting ingredients to develop flavor. Coffee beans are roasted until oils and aromatic compounds emerge. The barley used in dark beer goes through a very similar process. When roasted long enough, it develops flavor notes that closely resemble those found in coffee. But beer has another interesting element: gas. Carbon dioxide, or in some dark beers, nitrogen creates the foam and helps carry aromas toward your nose as you drink. This allows the flavors to spread more fully across the palate. You might imagine it like a glass of espresso, but with foam and gentle carbonation. It's this combination of deep roasting and carbonation that creates the unique experience of dark beer. Aromatic like coffee, smooth like cream, yet still lively like a sparkling beverage. From a distance, dark beer can look quite simple: a glass of dark liquid topped with a creamy head of foam. But behind that color lies an entire journey of fire and grain. A journey that begins with pale barley growing in the fields, passes through roasting ovens heated to hundreds of degrees, and finally becomes the source of the complex flavors found in the glass. Sometimes, what looks like something burnt is actually where the most beautiful flavors are born. Perhaps that is why dark beer is not meant for people in a hurry. It is more like dark roasted coffee or well-toasted bread, things that require time, heat, and a little patience to become truly perfect. In other words, dark beer is a fascinating example of a familiar idea. Fire can destroy, but when used the right way, it can also create remarkable flavor.